alien woman's body starts changing, and it's all because of a human. Captain Alina Reyes never expected her routine inspection of Deep Space Station Helios to turn into a diplomatic crisis. The massive solar observatory hung in space like a gleaming spider web, its delicate sensors constantly monitoring the nearby star systems for anomalies. As the station's new security chief, Alina took pride in maintaining order in this remote corner of human space. The arrival of the Luminarii delegation was supposed to be straightforward. The crystalline-based species had expressed interest in human solar observation techniques, and this was to be a simple technology exchange. But from the moment Ambassador Nyxus stepped through the airlock, Alina knew something was different. The Luminarii ambassador's translucent form caught the starlight, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the station's walls. Her crystalline features were arranged in the formal configuration that indicated her high diplomatic status. However, as she approached Alina, something extraordinary happened. The ambassador's crystalline structure began to pulse with an inner light that none of the human crew had ever seen before. The patterns of light grew more intense as she drew closer to Alina, and her normally rigid form seemed to become more fluid, more organic. "Captain Reyes," Nyxus's voice resonated through the chamber, carrying unusual harmonics. Something is happening." The ambassador's typically composed demeanor cracked as she looked down at her changing form in alarm. Alina's security training kicked in. "Medical team to the main airlock," she commanded into her comm unit. But as she reached out to steady the ambassador, their proximity triggered an even more dramatic response. Nyxus's crystalline surface began to ripple like liquid glass, her entire being seeming to reorganize itself at a molecular level. "This is unprecedented," Nyxus whispered, her voice now carrying a melodic quality that sent shivers down Alina's spine. "Our species, we are not supposed to be capable of such transformation. Your presence, your biological signature, it's catalyzing something within me." The station's chief scientist, Dr. Marcus Patel, arrived with his team, their scanners whirring as they documented the incredible changes. "Captain, these readings are off the scale," he reported, his dark eyes wide with amazement. "The ambassador's crystalline matrix is incorporating organic elements. It's as if her entire biological structure is evolving in response to human biochemistry, specifically yours." Alina felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Not only did she have to maintain station security, but she now had to manage an unprecedented biological event that could have far-reaching diplomatic consequences. The way Nyxus looked at her now, with facets that had somehow become more expressive, more alive, told her that both their lives were about to become far more complicated than either of them could have imagined. The quarantine lab aboard Helios Station hummed with activity as Dr. Marcus Patel and his team monitored Ambassador Nyxus's accelerating transformation. Through the observation window, Alina watched as the Luminarii diplomat's crystalline form continued its extraordinary metamorphosis. Where once there had been rigid geometric patterns, now flowing curves emerged. The ambassador's surface had taken on an opalescent quality, shifting between translucent and solid states. "The changes are progressing faster than we anticipated," Dr. Patel reported, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. "Her crystalline matrix is incorporating organic compounds at a cellular level. It's as if her entire species' evolutionary path is being rewritten in real time." Alina stepped closer to the window, and immediately Nyxus's form responded, pulsing with increased luminescence. "Can you feel that?" Alina asked, pressing her hand against the transparent barrier. "Every time I come near." "Your biochemistry acts as a catalyst," Nyxus responded, her voice carrying new depths of resonance that seemed to vibrate through the station's hull. "But it's more than that. I'm experiencing sensations my species has never known, emotions we thought impossible." The ambassador's newly formed features expressed a mixture of wonder and concern. My connection to you grows stronger with each passing moment. The lab's communication panel suddenly flared to life with an urgent message. Captain Ray's, Lieutenant Way's voice crackled through the speaker. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Luminarii High Council. There, demanding the ambassador's immediate return. Alina felt her stomach tighten. Put them through to the quarantine lab. The holographic projection materialized, revealing 3 stern Luminarii Council members, their crystalline forms rigid with traditional angles and patterns that now seemed archaic compared to Nyxus's evolving state. This is an abomination, the lead council member declared, their form flickering with patterns of disapproval. Ambassador Nyxus must be contained and returned for purification. These changes threaten the very foundation of our species' purity. With respect, Counselor, Dr. Patel interjected, forcing an interruption to this process could be dangerous. The ambassador's biological structure is in a highly unstable state. Any attempt to interfere could prove fatal. Alina watched as Nyxus moved closer to the window separating them, her transformed surface now almost fluid-like. I cannot return, the ambassador stated, her voice carrying new strength. What's happening to me? It feels right. As if our species has been frozen in evolutionary stasis, and this change was always meant to be. The council members' forms darkened with anger. Then you leave us no choice. A purification vessel has already been dispatched. We will not allow this contamination to spread. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the lab in tense silence. Alina, Nyxus called softly, using the captain's first name for the first time. My transformation. It's accelerating again. As they watched, her form began to emit pulses of light that matched the rhythm of Alina's heartbeat. The ambassador's newly formed features contorted in a mix of pleasure and pain. The connection between us, it's becoming something more than physical. Dr. Patel's instruments began chiming with urgent alerts. Captain, the ambassador's energy readings are spiking. Whatever's happening between you two, it's causing fundamental changes at the quantum level. It's as if your presence is awakening something dormant in her species' genetic code. Alina made a swift decision. How long until the purification vessel arrives? At maximum speed, 12 hours, Lieutenant Way reported through the comm. Then we have 12 hours to understand what's really happening here, Alina declared, her dark eyes meeting Nyxus's transformed gaze. And why the Luminarii Council is so afraid of these changes. As if in response to Alina's determination, Nyxus's form pulsed with renewed intensity, sending cascades of light throughout the lab. The transformation wasn't just changing her body anymore. It was awakening something that could reshape the future of both their species, whether they were ready for it or not. Deep within Helios Station's secure archives, Alina and Dr. Patel made a startling discovery. The station's historical databases contained classified reports of previous encounters between humans and Luminarii, each describing similar transformative reactions that had been systematically covered up. Look at this, Alina pointed to a redacted file from 30 years ago. Project Chrysalis, a joint human Luminarii research initiative that was suddenly terminated. Her fingers traced the holographic text as more details emerged. They were studying the potential for Luminarii evolution, but something made them shut it down. Dr. Patel's dark eyes widened as he scanned through the data. According to these readings, they discovered that human biochemistry could act as a catalyst for unlocking dormant genetic potential in the Luminarii species. But why keep this secret? The answer came from Nyxus, her voice carrying through the station's comms system from her quarantine chamber. Because it threatens the Council's control, she explained, her transformed body casting ever-changing patterns of light across the quarantine walls. Our society is built on the principle of unchanging perfection. The idea that we could evolve, become something more. It challenges everything they've built. A sudden alert blared through the station. Lieutenant Wei's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, we're detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're not just sending a purification vessel, it's a full tactical fleet." Alina rushed to the observation deck, her heart pounding. Through the vast windows, she watched as 7 crystalline ships materialized against the star field, their angular forms reflecting the light of nearby stars. This isn't about protecting their species, she realized. This is about maintaining power. Back in the quarantine lab, Nyxus's transformation had reached a new phase. Her once rigid crystalline form had become almost fluid, organic crystals flowing like liquid metal. More surprisingly, she had begun to display empathic abilities, sensing emotions and thoughts from the humans around her. "Alina," Nyxus called out, her voice resonating with newfound depth. "There's something else, something in my genetic memory awakening. We weren't always like this, static, unchanging. The Council. Their ancestors engineered our species, locked away our ability to evolve. They've been maintaining this artificial stasis for generations." Dr. Patel's instruments suddenly registered a massive energy spike. Nyxus's form began to pulse with intense light, and the very structure of her being seemed to ripple with possibility. "The suppressed genetic codes are activating," he reported, his voice filled with awe. "It's as if your entire species' evolutionary potential is awakening all at once." The station shuddered as the Luminarii fleet initiated docking procedures. Through the quarantine lab's windows, Alina could see crystalline troops beginning to march through the adjacent corridors, their forms rigid and angular, a stark contrast to Nyxus's fluid grace. "They're not here to save me," Nyxus warned, her transformed features expressing both fear and determination. "They're here to ensure these changes die with me. The Council would rather destroy one of their own than risk losing control." Alina made a swift decision, her military training kicking in. "Dr. Patel, initiate emergency protocol Omega. Lieutenant Wei, seal all bulkheads between us and the Luminarii boarding parties." She turned to face Nyxus, whose form now shimmered with an almost blinding intensity. "Whatever's happening to you, whatever you're becoming, I won't let them stop it." As if in response to Alina's words, Nyxus's transformation accelerated. Her body began to emit pulses of energy that interfered with the station's systems, causing lights to flicker and instruments to spin wildly. The very air seemed to crackle with potential. "Alina," Nyxus's voice echoed through her mind as much as her ears. "I think I understand now. This isn't just about evolution, it's about awakening. Your presence isn't just changing my body, it's freeing something that was locked away in all of us, something they never wanted us to remember." The sound of cutting torches against the sealed bulkheads warned that time was running out. As Alina prepared to defend both the station and Nyxus, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the brink of something much bigger than either of them had imagined, a revelation that could reshape the future of both their species. The quarantine lab erupted in chaos as Nyxus's transformation reached its critical phase. Her crystalline form now pulsed with energy that interfered with the station's systems, causing equipment to malfunction and power surges to ripple through Helios's infrastructure. Through the reinforced windows, Alina watched in awe as the ambassador's body became a swirling vortex of light and liquid crystal. "The readings are off the scale," Dr. Patel shouted over the growing electromagnetic interference. "Her cellular structure is completely reorganizing itself. It's like watching millions of years of evolution happening in minutes." The station shuddered as the Luminarii boarding parties breached another bulkhead. Lieutenant Wei's voice crackled through the failing comm system. "Captain, they're on multiple decks now. Our security teams can't hold them back much longer." Alina's mind raced through options. The Luminarii troops were methodically cutting their way through the station's defenses, their crystalline weapons capable of slicing through reinforced bulkheads like paper. But it was the change in their tactics that worried her most. They're not trying to capture her anymore, Alina realized, watching the tactical display. They're moving to contain and destroy. They know they can't control this. Inside the quarantine chamber, Nyxus's transformation had become something beautiful and terrifying. Her form shifted between states of matter, sometimes crystalline, sometimes liquid, sometimes pure energy. The air around her crackled with potential as ancient genetic memories awakened. Alina, Nyxus's voice resonated directly in her mind now, bypassing the failing communication systems. I remember what we once were. Before the council, before the engineering, we were beings of pure potential. We could adapt, evolve, become anything we needed to be. A massive explosion rocked the station as the Luminarii forces breached the final security checkpoint. Through the smoke and debris, Alina could see their crystalline forms advancing, weapons charged with purifying energy. Fascinating, Dr. Patel muttered, still recording data even as chaos erupted around them. The energy signature from their weapons. It's designed to force crystalline structures back into their base state. They developed technology specifically to prevent evolution. Alina made her decision. Despite every security protocol and regulation, she reached for the quarantine chamber's emergency release. If they want to stop this evolution, they'll have to go through me first. The moment the chamber opened, Nyxus's energy field expanded throughout the lab. Equipment sparked and failed as her transformed being reached out, drawn to Alina's presence like a moth to flame. The connection between them intensified 1,000-fold, and Alina gasped as she felt echoes of Nyxus's transformation resonating through her own body. It's not just me changing, Nyxus's thoughts flowed into Alina's mind. You're changing too. Humans, you have the potential to catalyze evolution itself. That's what the Council truly fears. The Luminarii strike team burst through the final door, their crystalline forms rigid with purpose. But they froze at the sight before them. Their ambassador, now a being of pure evolutionary potential, merged in a field of energy with a human who showed signs of her own transformation beginning. Stand down, Alina commanded, her voice carrying new harmonics that made the crystalline troops vibrate in response. She could feel Nyxus's power flowing through her, ancient knowledge awakening in her cells. The lead Luminarii soldier raised their weapon, but their crystalline forms shuddered with uncertainty. For the first time in their species' history, they were faced with something their rigid programming couldn't process: true change. Your council lied to you, Nyxus's voice echoed through the chamber, her energy form pulsing with truth. They didn't protect our species, they imprisoned it. Look at me. Look at what we could become. As if in response to her words, small changes began to appear in the crystalline forms of the soldiers, tiny fluctuations in their rigid patterns, microscopic shifts toward possibility. The sight of their own potential, locked away for so long, caused them to hesitate. In that moment of uncertainty, Nyxus's energy field expanded further, touching each Luminarii soldier with the promise of evolution. And deep within the station's systems, Dr. Patel's instruments recorded the beginning of a chain reaction that would reshape the future of two species forever. Helios Station's corridors blazed with unprecedented energy as the evolutionary wave spread from the quarantine lab. The Luminarii soldiers' crystalline forms flickered between their programmed rigidity and new, fluid possibilities. Alina stood at the center of the chaos, her own body beginning to shimmer with traces of crystalline energy as Nyxus's transformation affected her at a cellular level. The Council ships are powering up their main weapons, Lieutenant Wei's voice cut through the chaos. They're preparing to sterilize the entire station. Dr. Patel's instruments screamed with warnings as massive energy signatures built up around the Luminarii fleet. The purification beams are designed to reset all matter to its most basic state, he explained, his fingers flying over controls. They'll destroy everything, including their own people. But something unexpected was happening among the Luminarii soldiers. Those closest to Nyxus and Alina were changing, their crystalline forms becoming more fluid, more alive. The ancient genetic memories awakened by Nyxus were spreading like a cascade through their neural networks. Remember who we were. Nyxus's consciousness reached out to her people, her energy form pulsing with ancestral truth. Before the council, before the engineering, we were beings of infinite potential. We chose our forms. We evolved as we needed. We were free. More and more soldiers began to transform, their rigid patterns dissolving into flowing crystals that rippled with new awareness. But not all embraced the change. A group of elite guards, their forms still locked in traditional patterns, raised their weapons. This evolution must be stopped, their commander declared, firing a burst of purifying energy directly at Nyxus and Alina. Alina felt Nyxus's power surge through their connection, instinctively raising a shield of pure evolutionary force. The purifying beams struck the barrier and scattered, transformed by their combined potential into sparks of creative energy that seeded more changes throughout the station. The fleet is in firing position, Lieutenant Wei reported. We have minutes at most. Alina turned to the transformed Luminarii soldiers. Your council would rather destroy you than let you change. Will you accept that fate, or will you choose your own evolution? The soldiers looked at their flowing, transformed hands, feeling the pulse of possibility in their newly awakened forms. One by one, they made their choice. Their weapons clattered to the floor as they embraced the change, their bodies becoming brilliant with potential. The elite guards fired again, but this time the transformed soldiers moved as one, their fluid forms flowing together into a living shield. The purifying beams were absorbed and transformed, feeding the very evolution they were meant to stop. The council ships, Dr. Patel called out, they're channeling power to their main weapons, the energy readings. It's beyond anything we've seen. But Nyxus was ready. Her consciousness, now expanded beyond her original form, reached out to touch every transformed Luminarii on the station. Together, her thoughts resonated through them all. Remember how we once were. Remember how we shifted space itself. The transformed Luminarii moved in perfect synchronization, their fluid crystalline forms merging into patterns that hadn't been seen in millennia. Energy flowed between them, building into something ancient and new at the same time. Alina felt the power through her connection with Nyxus, understanding flowing into her transformed consciousness. The Luminarii hadn't just been beings of crystal, they had been shapers of reality, capable of bending space and energy to their will. As the council ships fired their purification beams, the transformed Luminarii acted as one. Their combined energy field expanded around the station, catching the beams and transforming them into pure evolutionary potential. The very weapons meant to stop their evolution became catalysts for even greater change. Impossible, the elite guard commander whispered, watching as their most powerful weapons were turned into fuel for transformation. But Alina and Nyxus knew the truth. Nothing was impossible for a species remembering its true nature. As the transformed Luminarii held their shield of evolution around the station, the next phase of their journey was about to begin, and with it, the revelation that would change both their civilizations forever.